Alrighty, hello everyone, and welcome to GameDay Squad's Women's Aussie Rules Show. To get this one started today, I'm going to be taking it off solo. So if you're watching live, welcome. If you're watching this a little bit later on, make sure to stick around. We're going to be giving you a game-by-game analysis of all the best starts, ones to watch, and maybe players to miss for the round. Of course, though, with the rounds recently, some teams have already started to play. So we'll have a little discussion soon about some of the players that have already smashed it for our fantasy squads, and then maybe have a look at some of the players that we're hoping to play a little bit better from those early games. So Bales will be here soon, but for now, let me take it away for the show. And what we're going to do first is shout out best competitors from round 5, and Bales has actually dominated. He's gone first in the starter and classic competition, so I know that he is devastated. He's not here right now to talk himself up, to gloat a little bit, as they say. But Pato's squad, look at some of those scores in the starter. Fantastic round. Jinby and Tonic, Prison Mike, Fez Monkey, some very, very familiar names there in the classic, those top spots. And we'll take it over to our challenger. Bales here again in 7th, but Wedge Tails smashing it this round. Got 2nd place by 11 fantasy points, but what a monster score. Prison Mike there again, Skippers, Fez Monkeys, and then have a look at Champion. It's Big Fez. It's a GOAT there sitting. Tony's Legends, what a performance and score. That is cracking the 3,000 score mark. Absolutely awesome. Skippers, Movementarian, Zach Dawson, Bow Power, and the rest there. So if you made it here, that means you were some of the best from last round. But yeah, now's a new round. We're into round 6, and of course, how's your round been so far? If you are here, let me know in the chat. Who did you decide to start? Were there some players you wanted to avoid based off matchups? But look, I'll take you through. I've had quite a lot of players play so far. Of course, there's been 3 games. So I've had Rebecca Webster play, which fantastic for anyone who put Becky Webster into their squads early. Wow, she had a killer performance. Amazing work. Just a score of 106 fantasy points as a defender. Thank you very much. I guess some of the disappointments from that game for me was O'Driscoll with 53 and Aisling Maloney. I really thought she was in for a big round this time, but she just didn't quite perform. She had 4 behinds, which was unfortunate. Some chances you normally would expect her to finish as well. So I'm hoping in the second game she can do a little bit better. We'll get into that analysis just a little later. But then Mimstrom as well. Who had Mimstrom? She was fantastic. 132 fantasy points. She just dominated that game. She played so well. Look, you're just super stoked if you had her in your squad. And she's the number 1 ranked ruck right now, and for good reason. She just has that ceiling in terms of fantasy production. And look, there are not many others like her right now that are dominating the game in that aspect. But then on the Wednesday, we had a little double header. We had the Hawks taking on the Suns. So Tilly Lucas-Rod, a defender that I know a lot of GameDay Squad coaches have been rolling out, only the 65 fantasy points. Fortunately, we have a double chance there, but probably not what we were looking for. But Daisy Darcy with 105, Charlie Rowbottom with 151. Now, that is exactly what you would have been looking for. So some fantastic performances from them. And then in the last game, I had Stephanie Wales, 99 fantasy points as a ruck. I'm definitely taking that. Cynthia Hamilton, only 66 fantasy points as a forward. I'm hoping for a little better. And I know that Ella Heads and Lucy McAvoy were a little disappointing as the Swans defenders. But, you know, who wasn't is Laura Gardiner. She's looking like back to her best. She's now had 4 performances in a row with over 125 fantasy points. So I guess there were some concerns earlier in the season. She had those back-to-back 108 fantasy point games. Would she still have that same ceiling? I think she's starting to put that to bed a little bit. So what a great round. Great performances. But what I think we're going to do, Bales isn't here yet. He's probably around the corner. I'm just going to get us started and get into game 1. So I know who Bales is starting. He sent me through his squad so I could pre-upload this just in case he was running a little bit late. But we're both starting Kate Hall, and for good reason. Now, look, the matchup matrix for GWS is a big concern. Everything's red. They're in the bottom tier of all fantasy positions and matchups for the competition. But I feel like Kate Hall, with an average of 100 fantasy points, sort of breaks that mold just a little bit for me. I wouldn't say matchup proof. She definitely has games where she performs better than others, but the upside is too much to bench someone like Kate Hall, irrespective of what any of the numbers are saying. She's been getting those midfield minutes. She's been playing extremely well. But after that, it was sort of a bigger void from me. As you can see, the matrix is there. Tani Evans hasn't really been having the season that we would have hoped. I know prior to the season starting, we had her quite high in our rankings, but only an average of 67 and 54 and 78 point performances over the past two. So it's a bit tough to get her in the squad, especially with some of the other defenders that are just playing fantastic right now. But I think that'll leave it there. If you have anyone in this game, I think it's a little bit of a risk. You're probably going for a pod and going for a performer who maybe other coaches aren't looking at, because we are getting to that point of the season where if you're trying to chase some weekly rewards, if you're trying to chase a seasonal rank, you maybe have to start taking some risks if you are a little bit behind. So, the likes of Goldsworthy, Parker, maybe you want to stream those players through. But as of right now, McNamara as well, having a pretty good season, coming off her best performance last week for the Demons. But I tell you what, with some of the mids in the competition, it's really hard to bench any of the ones that I at least have starting. And I'm sure Bales feels the same way. The next game we have here is the Crows taking on the Saints. And Adelaide, a very tough matchup for players because they're just a ball-dominant team. The one thing they sort of do struggle against is forwards. And that's why Jessie Wardlaw's been in my squad for majority of rounds this season. But I'm hoping that she can have one of her better games in this one. She's just a matchup nightmare for a lot of teams. She's really, really hard to defend, and she's really hard to match up on. And the Crows, I have a little bit concerned they don't really have someone to go one-on-one with her. And she's pretty versatile. She can get up and down the ground. So Wardlaw was a big part of my forward structure when setting my squad for round 6. And I'm pretty optimistic about maybe the game she can have. I'm just hoping it gets down there enough and she has enough opportunity. I'm not really expecting and anticipating much of that ruck upside. I know that she's had some hit-outs in some games, but it's going to be tough to get the ball down there at times. But yeah, look, if she can have a good game, we've seen her crack the 100 mark. We've also seen her plateau around that 40 as well. So we'll see if those kicks are up around that 10 mark and she kicks a goal or two. I think she's in for a big game. Randall, Noff, just some of the hottest players in fantasy right now. Randall is a forward, of course. She's just been so fantastic. Marinoff, you've got to try to play the highest rarity version you have of her player card because you're just going to be missing out otherwise. She's the best player in the competition. She has been in terms of fantasy for a long time, and she's not slowing down. If anything, she's only getting better. Look at her average there on the screen. 173 fantasy points. That is absurd. I think she finished last season with 152, 154. She's 20 fantasy points above that. I do think that comes down to the pace of the game and sort of the difference we have seen with some of the structures this season, but it's just meant more fantasy points, and we're not going to be complaining about that. But Maddie Newman is a position that Bales has left out, and a little bit shocking because you can see there some of the matchups. The defender matchup is green. The mids matchup, so she plays a bit of time on the wing sometimes, but she's mainly coming off that half back. I think this is a really big game for Newman. So I'm very, very surprised that Bales hasn't got Maddie Newman in her squad because I feel like she's been deserving of one of the top spots, honestly. And look, it's definitely a shocker to me. I would be putting Newman in my lineup. She's got the 5th best matchup in terms of fantasy defenders at the competition this week. And she's just one of the better defenders in fantasy right now with an average of 88 fantasy points. There are not many that are better than her. I think Tilly Lucas-Rod, Charlotte Thomas are probably some names, even Kearney when she's healthy. But that was one of the big, I guess, question marks of this round. Will she be healthy? I steered clear because I didn't want to put her in my squad. I've looked for some upside elsewhere and wanted to play a little bit safe in that regard. But let's get over to game 3. We have North Melbourne taking on the Bulldogs, and some of the same old names here. You'll see I've got Garner, so does Bales. We've got Riddell, and we've got O'Loughlin. Maybe one of the biggest surprises of the season so far. North are just fantastic. They have so many good players. You can see their top 3 averaging players there, all cracking 110 fantasy points. But Riddell with 142 and Garner with 134. I have a feeling some coaches out there were a little concerned with Garner and the start that she had to the season. But if you saw her last week and you saw her over the past couple games, like she got saved last round with a double game because she had a 98 fantasy score performance, but then backed it up with 162. So that was massive for coaches who started her, but she's really finding her feet. You know, we've seen over the past 4 games, 152, 150, 162 over the past 4 rounds. Monster performances. All my confidence is there, and Garner's just, I've got the All-Star, fortunately, but I'd be playing a silver and above if possible. Ash Riddell is just Ash Riddell. She dominates the disposals. She commonly gets her boot to the ball as well, getting the kicks and that extra buffer and fantasy points. Even when she has a bad start to a game or she goes quiet for a quarter or maybe 2, she just finds a way to get it done. She never really dips too low, and she just is such a consistent performer. Her lowest score this season is 106, and after that, it's 119. And all scores above that are 140 plus. So she just has that boom potential. She never really dips too low. And even her bad games, by her standard in fantasy, is still a great game and still worthy of starting her. But our big surprise, O'Loughlin. Alice O'Loughlin. Bonnie Toogood went down early this season, and some of the forwards like Gemma Houghton just haven't really panned out the way we thought it would. But I feel like O'Loughlin has just been that player that has come to save our fantasy squads and especially our forward line. She is just on a roll. She can't stop scoring fantasy points. Her worst performance of the season is at 64 fantasy points. She had 74 last week, which is one of her lower games, but the conditions were really tough. You saw, that, especially in that second game for North, it was raining very hard. The conditions were just not it. It was a very tough day in the office, I guess, for the girls, but it suited someone like Garner. Doesn't suit a speed player like O'Loughlin. So I actually expect her to bounce back. I reckon she's going back into the 80s, 90s in terms of fantasy points in this one, and I'm very excited to have her in my squad again. But myself and Bales are thinking the exact same in this game. And we're going to go over to game 4. We have the Tigers taking on the Magpies. This is going to be a great, great game. I can't wait. But I haven't started Monconti, and I'm very, very nervous about it. She is one of the more informed players in the competition. The average there of 109, I don't think it does it justice for how good she has been. But I've gone with someone else this round. And if you are following along, I would love to hear if you're starting Conti and if you think it's silly that I've dropped her. But for now, I'm currently not playing her. I'm going Sheeran and Brennan. I haven't looked at the injury news. I do have a replacement, let's call it, in case she's out. But I should have a quick look here. Katie Brennan has been ruled into this game. We'll also see Brianna Davey come back into this one. I know she's had an injury cloud for a while, so some great players and great fantasy performers coming back, and that's exactly what we wanted to hear. In the last game, Emma Kearney is actually officially ruled out, and Shearlaw has been ruled out as well, another forward for Kangas. So definitely avoid these players. Don't be putting them into your lineups. And I'm just checking the games before. No one too fantasy relevant, so I think we'll give that one a skip, and we'll take it off from where we are with the Tigers and Collingwood. Katie Brennan being back, though, very, very good for me. She's been a little up and down. She really does depend on her goal kicking, but as you can see, it's a pretty mid matchup for her in this one. I do anticipate a tighter contest in here, especially with the likes of Brianna Davey being back for Collingwood. It's going to be a big surge for them in their midfield, and hopefully it's going to lead to them winning a little bit more ball, at least for Collingwood's sake. But in terms of the fantasy performers, Monconti, you can see there it's actually a mid matchup as well. So it's pretty good. Nothing too special. But she's just, last week, she had 156 fantasy points. It's very hard to drop someone from a round where they're finishing on something like that. Fez is here. I'm the same. Conti out right now. Good chance she comes in for that 6 mid before the round ends. Yeah, it's really tough, isn't it? 170 or what was it? 156 fantasy points as a silver, 172, and I've decided to drop them. Pretty tough. But I'll tell you the player that I have later, and I'm just giving them the edge at the moment, but she would have been my 7th mid. If you could play a 7th mid, Conti definitely is that player for me currently. But going to stick with my guns. Sheeran is just Isla Sheeran. She sort of had a bit of a tagging role. She was on and off last week against North especially, but she just hasn't really played that bad. Her worst performance is 72 fantasy points. She's got the midfield role with Richmond. She's being able to use her pace, her speed, and play alongside Conti. And, Richmond have a lot of, inside mids. The one thing I guess they were missing is that outside player that has the speed to burn and a really big leg. And Isla Sheeran just fits that mold exactly. So she doesn't need to get on that inside, doesn't need to get the tough pill. She knows she's got Conti, Egan. She's got Dalloway that rotates through there that's going to do that for her. They're going to release her over the top and allow her to use and do what she does best in the game. So definitely get Isla Sheeran. She's one of the top defenders currently in fantasy, and this matchup shouldn't be any different. But that is going to do me. Katie Brennan, honestly, she's going to need to kick some goals in this one to live up to it. I had a really tough time between starting her or starting Hodder, because I know Hodder has been really good and Brennan is coming off an injury. So how significant is that injury, and should we have concerns in terms of rushing her back into our squads? It's definitely crossed my mind, but she's had a pretty good year by all standards. She had 77 fantasy points in the last round in the first game. So she's been playing some really good footy, especially fantasy footy, and I'm going to stick with it for now. And I'm going to take you in to game 5. So you can have a look at some of the matchup matrix data there. There's a lot of green and there's a bit of red. Let's call it some concerns. But one thing that shouldn't be a concern is Charlotte Thomas. And although that she's practically matchup proof because she does the kick-in duties for West Coast, she just kicks the ball so much in terms of other players, and she plays on all the times with the kick-ins that she's going to be taking. But she's just that good, and it's the second best matchup in fantasy for defenders. If that doesn't scream around where she can explode and maybe crack the triple digits, I'm not sure what quite will. So she's coming off an 83 fantasy point performance. I'm expecting a little bit better than that. And she had 18 kicks last game, but not many marks. She only had the 1 mark. So what I'm anticipating here is similar kicks, but a couple more marks and potentially getting to that 100 fantasy point, the ton. And if she can do that as a defender, absolutely, we're taking that. And she's going to be one of the better ones for the round in total. Other than this, though, Ella Roberts, bit of a pod to put in, but I just don't think she has that same scoring upside. And especially if you're having a look at a sort of a mid matchup versus Port. Port don't really have one ball-dominant player. You can sort of see it there in their midfielders, in Dowrick, Maloney, and Goody. Averages of 88, 76, and 69. They just share the ball around. They all just play their role. They do their thing. So they don't really explode, but they're a very good team at nullifying some fantasy points. And I just don't think Ella Roberts is going to have enough. She just doesn't have enough upside to put in your squad for this round in particular. But alrighty, let's get into game 6. And you could see I planned my emergency for everyone. Hodder was going to be my emergency player, but with Katie Brennan in and sort of, let's call it no concerns there with the still some concerns, but going to be starting her. That Hodder, unfortunately, won't be part of my squad. She's been ruled out. Just having a look at some of the teams here, the list that came out, no significant injuries in this one. But you can see that I've started Ali Anderson. Ali Anderson has an average of 123 fantasy points right now. She's been doing a really good job of scoring fantasy points and getting a lot of disposals. I know she started off the season really hot. I think she had a game with 40 disposals to kick off her campaign in 2024. But, she just doesn't really play bad. She is coming off a little, let's call it a bad stretch of 89 fantasy points apiece in round 3, in round 4. But other than that, we see 117, 134, 134, and 188. That was in round 2. So I'm having a look at this. The games in those, she's getting 20 plus kicks when she can explode. So, I'm putting in Ali Anderson. She's been a mid that's sort of streamed in and out. But I just see that the game script of this one is going to suit Ali Anderson quite well. She's going to be able to use her pace. She's going to be able to use her skill set, and I think she's going to dominate. So that's why I'm going. I'm taking Ali Anderson in, and I've just heard my good friend is here. Bales, let's get him in, everyone. Welcome.
Yep. Sorry, everyone. Life gets in the way sometimes, and had to just finish off the final things of moving house. But we're here, so let's chat some AFLW fantasy.
It's good to have you, mate. I've been talking to myself. It seems like a while, but now you're here.
Sorry, mate.
Well, I've been having a chat here with Fez. We both have bench Conti this round.
Yep.
Both of us deciding to start Ali Anderson. We did see, because we've set your squad up so everyone's been able to follow along, that you did have Mon Conti Bronze in there.
Yep.
What do you think about that decision? Do you think it's a little bit risky with having some 80-point performances recently for Anderson? Or what's your thoughts in general here?
I think it's more just the fact that we saw Carlton last week try and tag Jazz Garner. I just think that Ali Anderson's going to cop some attention. That's why I don't have her. Whereas Mon Conti from Collingwood, I don't know exactly who I see going with her. I'm still weighing up. There's still a very real possibility that I put Anne Hatchard in instead on my bench just for the week. So probably tossing up between Hatchard and Conti. And I am going to that game tomorrow night. Finally first game of the season after moving house and everything. But I'm going to watch Crows and St Kilda. So I might put Anne Hatchard in just to watch her, and obviously being a Crows fan. So, and I don't know if anyone for St Kilda is really going to tag her. So to be safe, I might even just do that. So I'm still undecided, but at this moment in time, Conti's there, but it could change.
Haven't read this comment. I don't think I've quite recovered from Saturday yet. But what I'm told, haven't seen someone run solo that well since Luke Parker in the last quarter on Saturday.
No, it's funny. That's funny.
Goodness, thanks, Fez. Appreciate it, mate. But yeah, let's keep ticking over. I had Hodder there. You can see the little emergency bails just to give you some insight. If Katie Brennan was ruled out, Hodder was going to be that forward that came in for me. But with the teams coming in and seeing that Katie Brennan is going to be healthy and with a pretty good matchup in terms of matchup matrix as well, I've decided that Hodder will be on the pine.
You got me very, very worried. I was looking at, I've just gone through the teams as Katie Brennan has been named. So, so she's in, but I was a bit worried. I saw that plus on. That looks like an injured sign. And I was just like, wait, is Hodder injured? I'm like, that affects my GameDay Squad. It affects my other formats.
She was my emergency for an injury. I guess that was sort of I didn't want to sit it there and people think I was starting her. So I had to put a little tag for, people to know. But yeah, definitely bit of a risk, but other than that, I guess Hodder is probably one of the only other players going to be playing. Bales, why don't you talk about why you've been big on Hodder all season, and it's sort of the dividends had been paid last week. Last round, she had one of her best performances. Finally, you've still got her in the squad. Talk to me about it.
Yeah, so obviously Carlton is a decent matchup here, and I expect Brisbane to win this game, and whether I see them winning comfortably or not is obviously another thing. Just depends what Carlton you get. Are we going to get the Carlton that played against Geelong that smashed them? Or are we going to get the Carlton that played against North Melbourne that got beaten pretty badly? So I'm probably leaning a bit more closer towards the team that played against North Melbourne, just because with Karen Peterson being a bit of experience lost there. And we saw Hodder last week against the Crows play as that extra midfielder, played right up the ground, played around stoppages, and she played really well. Like she had nine kicks, 5 handballs, kicked a goal, had 8 tackles, which is obviously important as well, and had 96 GameDay Squad points. So I just see her as a player that, like, she's had her worst score this year in GameDay Squad was a 45, which was in her second game, round 4 against West Coast. You could probably forgive her a little bit for that because having the 2 games in the 1 week. Then she scored a 50 in round 2. Besides that, she's gone over 60 in every other game. So she's been pretty solid, but there's that upside of if she plays that extra midfielder, she can have that better score. So that's why I've got her in there. And as you said, as you know, I've been big on Hodder as a forward for most of the year, and with the lack of options, I think she's a pretty good one in what? Well, she's only kicked the what? She's only kicked 2 goals this year. I wouldn't be shocked if you see Courtney Hodder and you see at least 2 goals next to her name in this game.
For sure. Well, speaking of kicking, mate, we're going to have a kick-off pretty soon, or the first ball up, let's call it.
20 minutes.
In about 20 minutes. So let's fly through this next little section. So we're giving everyone enough time to get their squad set, at least for the game that's about to become. But this game is going to be of teams who have already started. So, Bales, we had a little chat earlier. We spoke about Rowbottom, and she just dominated. Fortunately, she's been up and down in terms of her season. Of course, we know she's going to get attention. We know that teams are going to be looking at trying to slow her down. But gosh, she didn't slow down on the weekend.
Oh no,
151 fantasy points, and with another game to potentially top that, amazing.
Yeah, it was that last quarter where she went big. She had over 50 GameDay Squad points in the quarter, which is absurd. Plenty of tackles. It would have been a bigger score if not for, I think she gave away 4 free kicks as well, and at least 2 of them were tackles. So what? Yeah, that's a 6-point turnaround in GameDay Squad. Like, so you're losing 6 points there, and who knows? Yep. I think maybe one or both of them could have been holding the ball, which would have meant obviously an extra point for the free 4, and then obviously 4 points for a kick if she did that. So it could have been maybe 20-point difference. But
she had a
big game, and obviously the reason you put her in is not just because of that, is that she's got 2 games, so you got 2 cracks at it. So and she's borderline untaggable just with how big and strong she is. So I think that she's a lineup lock pretty much each week anyway.
Love it. Well, I'll talk about Daisy Darcy. We both have a bronze in there for our defense, but mate, 20 kicks in that game, totaling to 105 GameDay Squad fantasy points. She's been one of the big surprises. She was sort of just out of my, I guess, preseason ranks in terms of top 7. But since I think around 2 or 3, I don't think she's come out of my squad. I've just loved what I've seen from her, the role she's playing. She's playing good time in the midfield. She's just so good at scoring points in a hurry as well. We spoke about some of the games where she left injured and she still had good fantasy performances. If you didn't watch the game at all, you wouldn't have even known that she spent a quarter on the bench for some of those. And you just think, wow, she could have scored so much more. But a full game, 105 fantasy points. We love that. I went Wales. I've been thinking she's been one of the sleeper rucks for me all season. I've been trying to get her in. She's sort of paid off finally. 99 fantasy points with the second chance. Just looking at the matchup matrix, though, look, we'll see. It's not looking like a very good matchup for the rucks, but I feel like 99 fantasy points irrespective. I'm taking that. I'm very happy with that as my second ruck spot, especially we went through this before, Bales, but with Strom going so well with 130. So to have 99 as my secondary score there, you're taking that all day.
Oh, yeah, and the fact that 99 was very much like the Matilda Schultz play from me last week, right? She scored 99 points or just above, I think. So you're sort of in that boat. You take that. I think as my second ruck, I think I actually had Lucy Wales as my
Yes, the other Wales.
Chat about in a sec. So I think both of them were good picks with both games. I sided with Lucy Wales just with her form, and I didn't quite like the second matchup. So you're looking at the first one, but she scored fantastic in that matchup. So you'd be very, very happy with her. And thankfully, in my pod here, I've got Maddie Gay. At least I've got a silver. I was trying to hunt a bronze, which I think a lot of people were, but I had the silver. So chucked her in. She had a decent game last night. I started slow, but got going. And Gold Coast is a pretty good matchup for defenders, as you can see on the screen there. So I'm hopeful that she can even go better in this second game.
Yeah, 100%. And mate, I'll tell you what, I was having a look at some of the numbers for the positional numbers, and she's creeping into the top. She currently sits at 4th in terms of total fantasy points for the season. Of course, that number's a bit skewed because some teams have played twice. Some teams haven't had that opportunity yet. But she is playing fantastic. And, what a season. And a player that I'm definitely targeting to get into my defense soon. Been trying to get a trade for that one. Let's get into game 8, though. My Swannies taking on Geelong. And you can see there, we have a lot of players in this one. A couple differences, though. So Gardner, she had a fantastic game as well. She played so well. You have the All-Star Bale, so I know you'd be stoked about the performance she had with 126 fantasy points.
Yeah, exactly. And the matchup matrix there for Geelong says 11, but I'm looking forward to this. This is the matchup of the two that I was hoping that Gardner could go big in. the Bombers aren't necessarily the easiest matchup for midfielders, but Geelong, I know it says 11 there, but I think they're a bit easier than that. No, Amy McDonald there as well means they're weaker there. And I think Gardner this could be the game where she goes absolutely massive. So looking forward to seeing what she can do in this one.
Cynthia Hamilton, a little disappointing, 66 fantasy points, but you can see they're the fourth best matchup for forwards, and she definitely has that forward rotation. I guess why we're starting her right now is because she does come into the mids, and she's going to get some pill there, but she does rotate forward. She will spend a good chunk of her time there, and an opportunity to not only score goals, but put on that extra fantasy points with a fantastic matchup. So looking for her there to use her skill and potentially score big and get better than what she did in the first game. So 66 fantasy points. I'm hoping for a little bit more, thinking more around that 75 to 80 mark with a good matchup here. You went McAvoy, though. This is someone I featured quite commonly earlier this season. You sort of steered clear, but now you got on. Bales, talk to me about this decision.
Just the fact that she's got the 2 games, so there's obviously you got the chance of a good score coming out of there, and the Geelong game was a bit more of the matchup I was targeting. I didn't love the fact she was playing on a wing in the last game, and even Ella Heads was someone I did also half consider putting in my defence just for the week, just because she had 2 games. But I opted for McAvoy. And we actually had a lot of defenders have their doubles. Obviously, you've got Beck Webster, who we've both got. You've got McAvoy. You've got Ella Heads. You've got Daisy Darcy, Emma Driscoll, Gabby Newton. Like, there's a heap of defenders that got 2. So
Tilly Lucas Rod.
Yeah, 2 Lucas Rod, another one. So there was a heap there. So you had to sort of pick which ones you wanted to put in or not. But I decided for McAvoy just because of how good she's been there. But you've got the pod there that I wish I had in my lineup. Had a great first quarter, but she scored like 3 points, 4 points the second half, like Ash Maloney. So talk to you about her and sort of obviously disappointment with the second half and what your hopes are for her in this game.
Yeah, well, I guess the first thing that stood out, 1 goal, 4 behinds. Just some opportunities that went missing there. She's been so elite in terms of goal kicking. Excluding this game, her past 2 games, she has 7 total goals. 4 goals and 3 goals. And honestly, she could have done that again very easily. She definitely missed some opportunities that you would expect her to hit. She's very skilled in front of goal, and I was highlighting that she can kick them from anywhere. But there was some more, let's call it routine kicks for her that just weren't going in. I just think it was one of those halves. It was one of those days. Sometimes the ball just doesn't bounce your way. Sometimes it's not going. But the signs in terms of fantasy and why you want her in your squad were definitely there. She's coming up the ground. She has such a good pair of hands. She has a good contested grab, and she is so fast. For someone who is as tall and as big as her and plays key forward, she has speed and burns people very often and gets very easy shots on goal because of it. So if this game's a bit free-flowing and we can get the ball over the top, I'm expecting her to be able to run at it at full pace and get a nice shot. So a couple more goals for me, and that performance, isn't as bad, and we're talking about it a little bit differently. But 61 fantasy points considering how well she started was a little underwhelming, but I'm not concerned. I feel like in this next matchup, she's going to go a lot better, and I'm hoping she's going to prove me right because she's been having a great season. And look, that's her second lowest score for the year so far. So
yeah, exactly. I think she'll have a better game in this one, I reckon.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And Beck Webster, how good was she, mate? Goodness, in that first game. Spending time in the midfield, 106 fantasy points, just gets so many kicks, so fantasy friendly as a role.
Yeah, I was just going to say I was frustrated. I was frustrated I didn't actually look more into it in the starter comp, obviously, because I'm trying to go for that one as well. I could have traded for Beck Webster and given up a Sabrina Frederick Bronze and put her in my starter team, so I didn't get her in that, but at least I've got her in the classic, which is the main one. So great game from her, and hopefully she can go better in this one.
Yeah, I'm going to pull up a question here from JT. In rounds where teams play 2 games, how much emphasis are you putting in selecting players from these teams? So McCarthy, Gilroy would be good examples in this round.
Yep.
Now, I definitely have an opinion on this, so I might go first, Bales, and then you can let everyone know your thoughts. But I actually think this benefits positions other than midfielders because there's always a concern that midfielders are going to be rested. They're going to be sitting or spending a lot more time forward in terms of their rotation. But I've tend to notice that defenders, forwards, and rucks have really, really been benefiting by having the double game because a lot of the time players aren't playing as great in one and they're playing extremely well in another matchup and sort of saving what would be a bad score, let's call it. So for defenders and forwards, I'm going pretty heavy on the double games, actually. I'm really looking at some of those matchups and thinking, and I actually have some regrets. You didn't mention Bodie, but Bodie from Hawthorn, a player I had in the week prior, is someone I should have had in. The
Oh,
double chance. She's
that's
playing in the wing. She's
someone
been
I had
playing
in.
fantastic. So I'll tell you what, definitely have a look. I think the two keys for me are defenders and forwards, but have a look at some of those matchups as well and sort of determine who you want to be taking the risk on. But I'm proceeding with mids very cautiously with that. But in saying that, Garner had 162 fantasy points on a double game last round. So it's not out of the realms of playing well. Just I think a little bit more precaution needs to be taken.
Yeah, I was pretty happy putting Bodie in. I was able to get a second bronze and put it in both starter and classic. Again,
Beautiful.
I think everything you said is pretty much spot on. When players got 2 games, even the mid, like top of the tree players in each line you keep, but the players you have on your bench or at like D6, F6, or M5 is where you can start looking at, okay, if you've got like a Hatchard, but then you've also got a, let's say Laura Gardner wasn't in your top 6 mids, you probably edged to Gardner because she plays 2 games and you got that double chance. So, but then on the other hand, if you put a Brie Davey in like I did in my Challenger thing in round 4, you sort of get bit by that because she gets concussed in that game, not only misses that game, but then misses the following game as well. So it's that balancing act where you probably don't want to go insanely heavy, but 50-50 calls, you probably lean to the player that's got 2 games.
But great question, nonetheless, and it's I think something we're still working out. It's the first season of it happening, and I think as we go along, we're going to get a lot better at it and knowing what to target. But yeah, that's my gut feel at the moment, and hopefully that answers your question quite well.
Yep.
Let's get into game 9 though. We got Freo and Hawthorn. The last one to kick it off. We both had Strom, but you didn't just have Strom. You had a gold Strom. I spoke about her performance. Do you just want to quickly talk about it, and then we'll talk about some of the other players in this matchup?
Yeah, so just again targeting the matchups here. The Geelong one was good. She had a solid score. I think she had like 140, so that's why I ended up lining up. And Geelong was the matchup I was targeting. So if she scores better in this game, fantastic. If not, I'll take the 130. It was just the fact I was trying to target. The fact she had 2 matchups, she's averaging She's averaging the second most for Freo. And with good matchups, there's a chance she could go big. So I thought I had a little bit extra salary. I thought, yeah, I'll put it on Strom with the extra game.
Nice. Well, O'Driscoll, a little disappointing for me. Look, she had a fantastic game the round before with 87 and 111, so in some great form, but only 6 kicks, 9 handballs, and that's just not going to do it, I guess. So I definitely took the risk here with the double. The matchup as well, unfortunately, doesn't scream amazing things in terms of going up against Hawthorn in the next one, but she's a leader in that team. She definitely has the ability to step up and score a bit better than that, and I'm hoping she can pull out a better performance and get more around that 15 to 12 kicks mark. And that'll definitely at least give me a good boost in terms of score there. But have a look at some of the Hawthorn players you went. You went Bodie, Wales, Lucas Rod, and McDonough. So you were loving at least the first matchup and then hoping here that you can get a bit of a double chance at some of these scores, hey?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was lining up with. The fact I missed Ash Maloney in the first game, I was like, I wanted to target players that double the 2 games, especially in the forward line. I think that's where you really do try and target the doubles is the forwards. And I thought, yeah, Greta Bodie, Anya McDonough. And Anya McDonough, funny enough, actually had a very similar game to Ash Maloney. Funny enough, they're both Irish and they both had very similar games. They had very good first halves, and then they slowed down the second half. So hopefully for both of us, they can both have big second games there. And again, Lucy Wales, it was her or Steph I was looking at this week. I went Lucy with the better sort of recent form and probably the better 2 matchups. And obviously, T. Lucas Rod, they're just a lineup like every week. So they're just locked in.
Only 3 points splitting the Wales, so I got 3 extra points on you on that. And who knows? You might get you might make up the 3 points or get
Mim Strom, those tough matchups. I was more again a bit like Steph. You're probably targeting the first matchup. Lucy, I was targeting the first matchup.
Definitely targeting the first.
Yeah, but then again, it was Gold Coast, so part of it's like, well, it's a tough matchup. So you're just sort of hoping that the first matchup she could just put up saying and then not have to worry about her against Strom. But we'll see how she goes in this game here.
it's the hitouts for Strom. 42 won in her last performance. So, it's just such a good buffer and fantasy points. But, mate, that's sort of going to wrap us up. Got plenty of forwards in this one. That'll be a good way to wrap up the round. I guess at this point, it's only going to be adding a little bit of extra scores on top of players that you already have. So we'll sort of have a good understanding at who's going to perform well in terms of the leaderboards and who's not. Bales, we gave you a big shout out earlier this show with all the leaderboards featuring 3 times over our competitions. But of course, that first slide, having 2 first place in Classic and Starter. So you've been on fire this season. You're officially in that top 5 range, I think, for both now. So you're looking very good for a prize card coming up in,
Hopefully a couple, mate. Hopefully a couple, Starter and Classic. Just a shame I'm probably a little bit too far behind in Challenger. Had a good couple of weeks in Challenger, but probably a bit far away for that. But yeah, Starter and Classic is definitely where, fingers crossed, we can keep this going.
But alrighty, for everyone that's here, Bales, here's your squad in all of its glory. 5th for the season in that Classic that we're talking about.
As I said, that
number 1 weekly.
That's first time ever I've finished first weekly in any comp, whether it be men's footy, men's rugby, cricket, whatever, anything. It's the first time on GameDay Squad finished top for a week. And I said to you last week, I was like just waiting for that number 1 week and we got it. So hopefully we can keep the good times rolling.
For sure. And here is my squad for everyone that's here watching it live in all of its glory, hoping we can crack into sort of that top 5 range again, because I'm close. I'm sort of on the boundary of cracking into the top 10 for seasonal, but need to have a good couple strong weeks here to get it done. But for everyone, that's going to wrap us up. Our next show, round 7 preview, will be next Thursday, hopefully kicking off at 5:45, as Bale said. Apologies for not being able to kick it off at our normal time, but we should be back into the swing of things and the groove as of next week. But get a snack, get a beverage. Nah, mate, we got 3 minutes until kickoff. Unfortunately, bit of a shorter show. But if you're going to make those last-minute decisions, get it in now.
No packs, unbelievable.
Yeah, unfortunately, well, bit tight on time.
No, we're all good, mate. No, we'll enjoy the football, everyone. As I said, apologies for that, but house is all moved, everything's done, so get to relax now, and we'll be on time heading forward. So that's my
beauty. If you're on the YouTube, make sure to leave a like, or if you're there on Twitter or Facebook, do the same. Go show